Hi, Michelle. Are you starting the recording, or you have? Okay. Well, can I welcome everybody to the meeting, and can I ask, are there any apologies for absence? You're muted, Michelle.
We've had no apologies today.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. The next item on the agenda is the excuse me, prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. Certainly, I don't think we've have any. And the next item, racing through at a rate pace of knots, is the letters and minutes. Are there, any questions with the minutes? Would anybody like to propose that they're a true record? Linda, and a seconder. Mike Day, Councillor Mike Day. Great, thank you very much. And as we working through, the next item on the agenda is public questions, and Michelle tells me there are no public questions, none have been received. So the main item is how are we improving schools in Swansea, and I'm delighted to welcome Robert Smith, Councillor Robert Smith, the cabinet member, and Damien Beach, who is the lead school improvement advisor. Great, Damien, Robert, who is going to lead on it or speak first, or how are you going to play it?
Well, if I could just introduce the item, then I think the report that Damien's prepared, and I thank him and his colleagues for the work that's gone into this report, because I think it does provide a very good overview of the operations of the school support team, how they've tried to respond to COVID and under the difficult circumstances, and assisted our schools and supported our schools to respond to the COVID situation. But I think looking forward beyond that, I think there are some themes coming out of this report about how Swansea will be supporting schools in future, what the ways of working will be, and I think that raised some interesting issues for the future for us. So perhaps if Damien can take us through the report in detail, and then we can come back to a discussion at the end, Chair.
Great, thanks very much, Robert. Damien.
Yes, thanks. I'm assuming you've all got the report and you've read it, so I won't read it sort of verbatim, be like a talking book for you. So I'll just go through, sort of give the headlines. Is that okay, Chair?
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so going through with 1.1, assuming you can see the same report I'm looking at, you'll be aware of the background to the creation of the school improvement team. Currently, the primary phase team and the secondary phase team. I mean, for your information, on an interim basis, on a temporary basis, as of tomorrow, the teams will merge, as my secondary colleague will be moving on, has been promoted. And then paragraph 1.2, the mixed model of permanent and commissioned advisors is quite well liked by head teachers. I was talking to the head at Bishop Gore earlier this week, and they quite like the model of commissioned advisors. So what that is our existing an existing head teacher or several existing heads will be commissioned to come out, work with the school improvement team to support the schools. It provides professional learning opportunities for the heads, and it keeps the team current in terms of issues schools are dealing with in the here and now. I mean, COVID being an obvious example of that. It can present challenges in terms of communication and being in team meetings, etc. But on the whole, it's worked well. Moving down to 1.3, it talks about the responsibility of the school improvement team. There is school improvement guidance that was consulted on last year. That it's going to be issued this term, the updated guidance. It'll refine the role of school improvement officers, and if Scrutiny want, I can update you when the guidance has been published as to what that role will look like according to Welsh Government. as they see it going forward. Unlikely to be major changes to what you see on your screen, but what you're looking at in the report. But it could include things like curriculum design support and assessment arrangements. There's a consultation out with regard to assessment arrangements at the moment, and I'm reading that Welsh Government is certainly seeing a role for local authority and regional consortia in supporting schools. Paragraph 1.4, schools are still facing challenges with the relaxation in restrictions such as bubbles and contact groups, and councillors no doubt receive update regarding numbers of COVID cases and the difficulty schools are still facing. And I know many of you are governors on schools, so you'll be aware through your head teachers of there's still a pressure out there for schools with regard to dealing with COVID. So moving on then to the briefing and the main body of the report. As it says in 2.1, there was a sort of mixed economy with how visits were conducted. So some were face-to-face, some were virtual. We've all moved into the virtual world, and perhaps some things will never return to the way they were in some respects. So that there was a mixed economy there. In paragraph 2.2, you can see the primary phase team's objectives, and they were largely echoed by the secondary phase team, which included partnership working as well. But there was a pretty, similar objectives for both the teams. And then in paragraph 2.3, we supported our schools as and when required, really. There's an example there, but I could give you dozens of other examples from colleagues of how they've worked and supported their schools. The last part of the first paragraph, it talks about consultations, and there were 9 consultations alone in the summer. And head teachers, they had very limited amount of time to be able to look at these. We all know the reasons why. So as a team, we would try and give executive summaries to heads and suggestions as to how they could respond, and we had some positive feedback from heads. They appreciated, that we were doing that work on their behalf, if you like, for them. Still in 2.3, but on in the paragraph now with regard to the suspension of categorisation, that was widely welcomed by education professionals. It allowed visits to focus on the excellent work schools were doing to support their pupils during the pandemic, while still preparing for major changes like Curriculum for Wales and the ALNet bill. And in the same paragraph, we would talk to schools about how they would use their PDG, their Pupil Development Grant, and other grants that were coming in. Grants were coming in thick and fast last year, such as the Recruit, Recover, Raise Standards grant. So we talked to schools about how grants were being used, and I could update councillors then with regard to grant use. I think I updated in March with regard to PDG spend. So moving on, continuing on then, on the next page, Swansea pupils would support schools needed to enhance provision. So the visits would give the opportunity to see good practice, to share with others. One of the bullet points in the work stream was to discuss how we share good practice, discuss support for our EFSM pupils. So the visits would allow us to identify good practice and then share with others or signpost to others, and we did that in a variety of ways. And we could do that through our networks. So the continuity of learning was supported by the sharing of good practice. The digital lead network, we would ask them how they were supporting blended learning, for example, any good examples that we could share with colleagues, and we'd collate, if you like, the responses, and we'd share the responses with one another, with the digital lead, with head teachers. And again, we've had positive feedback that it was useful in being able to see what others were doing. Then with the continuity of learning with the COL group, the primary phase, down to the sort of the white bullet points, creating a range of resources for schools and facilitating coordinated seminars, training for staff, providing live lessons via Teams, etc. what we would do is we'd work to create template policies and documents for schools, and the thinking was that it would be better for a few of us to spend time creating the resources for 90 plus head teachers. There's 94 settings in Swansea, as you know, than for the 94 head teachers to be all busy creating these policies and templates from scratch. So we would try and create things that they could adopt and adapt if they wanted to. They didn't have to, but again, that was well received on the whole. And more examples after the bullet points in the secondary, senior and middle leader networks, really embedded networks in which we could share good practice and learn from one another. And the live and recorded lessons, an example of Swansea's PRU leading the way there, and you know, helping support others and informing the policy and practice in Swansea. So moving on to paragraph 2.4, what was remarkable, considering the restrictions and the pressures, was the amount of professional learning that was undertaken by schools and facilitated for schools. So as an example, Professor Mick Waters provided sessions for over 30 schools for the heads, for senior staff, for the teachers. Some of it would be recorded sessions which schools could use in ad sessions. So they'd follow the video, they'd pause it, they'd have discussions as a staff, professional discussions. But there were also live sessions in there as well. So that's an example of engaging in professional learning. And there's more. The curriculum team from the region, ERU, as it was, I've worked with a cluster to work on curriculum design. So some really good professional learning and innovative in many ways, because, you know, like I say, the examples of the videos, the pre-recorded sessions and the live, you know, we wouldn't have been doing things like that just 2 years ago. You know, we wouldn't have thought of being able to do it like that. So paragraph 2.5. There have been well-attended governor training sessions, and again, you know, perhaps a positive consequence of the restrictions and the ways of working that we now find ourselves coping with is governor training sessions have been better attended, because you don't have to get to the civic centre, you can join remotely. So yeah, some training sessions have been facilitated for governors, and as I say, well attended on the whole. In 2.6, as mentioned, the visits would allow us to find out more about how the PDG spend was supporting our EFSM pupils and vulnerable pupils. And you'd have been told in previous meetings about how the authority, you know, was supporting digitally excluded learners, just as an example. And you can see there I've given the figure of over 11,000 devices distributed to homes across Swansea. You know, and Chris Rees, I know you know, I'm sure you've met Chris, was phenomenal in the amount of work he did to make sure that was undertaken. And just before we get to number 3, then just talking about the range of uses of PDG that are largely evidence-based. You know, schools would look at things like the Education Endowment Foundation. They'd look at Great Teaching Toolkit. You know, there's a lot of evidence out there now as to strategies they can use. There's a program called RADI, Raising Attainment of Disadvantaged Youngsters. So schools are more and more using evidence to inform the strategies they put in place to support their pupils. And then on to section 3. This section of the report was prepared by Dave Borden, and he goes on to talk about the, you know, gives the background of the Skills and Talent programme and the 9 City Deal projects that you're probably aware of. To be honest with you, I had to go and look up what was going on with it, because this hasn't been an area that I've had much to do with. But in 3.2, Dave refers to a business case for the Skills and Talents programme. The 4 local authorities have approved it, and it's currently awaiting approval from Welsh and national governments. And Dave's expecting that by October half term. And you know, I'm sure Dave would be more than happy to come along should you want updates in the future from Dave, or I can provide them on his behalf. And in 3.3, it talks about the focus on digital construction, energy, smart manufacturing, and life science and well-being skills, and a skills and talent program looking to influence curriculum development. And you know, that's particularly timely as schools obviously are considering their curriculum and assessment arrangements for 2022 optional for secondaries, but 2023 for years 7 and 8 and onwards. So it's timely that they're working on these, and it should influence their curriculum design going forward. So on to the conclusions and summary. I do think school improvement advisors, as we're now known, have supported the schools well, provided a range of professional learning opportunities. We tried to tread the very fine line of supporting schools, but giving them the breathing space to be able to get on with dealing with the day-to-day pressures that they're facing. The school improvement team, we've supported governing bodies to make head teacher and deputy head appointments. For example, there's 7 new and acting heads who've started in Swansea in September, and there were a few that started during the academic year last year. So there's been a raft of senior appointments that we've made that we've supported in Swansea. And of course, when you know a head is appointed, often they've been promoted from deputy head. So there's the deputy head appointments that we support with as well. Then 4.3, you know, again, I reported back in March to councillors on PDG spend, but I do think EFSM pupils are well supported. Schools use their PDG well. I just talked to you about it being evidence informed, but also the recruit recovery standards, the accelerated learning programme, the grant that came in last year and continues to come into schools from Welsh Government is also focused on supporting pupils to recover, if you like, from the pandemic, and it's aimed at supporting vulnerable pupils as well. And then 4.4, as mentioned previously, the work of the RLSP, the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership, that will influence curriculum design. So it's good to see that secondary school teachers, they're going to be very much involved in the co-construction of projects moving forward. And then, you know, 5, 6 and 7 there are no legal implications or finance implications, and it didn't require an integrated assessment implication on this occasion. And there's a glossary then at the end. So that's about it for me, Chair.
Damien, thank you very much for that full report. Have we got somebody with mics on? We're getting a bit of a feedback. But yeah, thanks, Damien. Thank you very, very much indeed. Are there any questions to either Damien or Robert? Can't see any hands up at the moment. I'd say three things you mentioned, Damien. First of all, vital the assessment arrangements around the curriculum. I think they're important. Sharing good practice, number 2. And the third thing I would say, and I know Councillor Smith, we've talked about this quite often, and that is that we need to do the very best out of the city deal to make sure local children get the best job, have the opportunity of getting those best jobs. Right, I can see a few hands up. Al Roberts first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Damien, for introducing that report. Just a question from the primary school side of things. Really interested in, the situation pre-pandemic was that we as a scrutiny panel were still seeing a problem where primary school levels of attainment weren't matching the level that they needed to be in some schools in Swansea when those children entered the comprehensive system or moved up into secondary education. Of course, there's a pandemic. It's happened. We were encouraging everyone that came before us to tell us how they were going to tackle this issue. I just wondered, in your professional opinion, when we as a scrutiny panel might be able to come back to this issue to ask the County Council how the progress is going towards this aim. The mismatch in attainment is still there despite pupil deprivation grants and other grants going into schools. Great to hear that there's an evidence-based approach to the spending of those grants. I would have liked to think that that was the case beforehand, but you know, continuous improvement is where we're all trying to go here. So do you think by this time next year we will be able to see the correlation between increased spend, evidence-based spending, and increased attainment in those schools where the attainment isn't where it was before the pandemic?
Thank you, Al. Damien.
Yeah, it's in terms of measuring attainment, because the Welsh Government, they've removed sort of foundation phase teacher assessments, they've removed end of key stage 2 teacher assessments, and they used to be quite a good thing you could use to measure. The national tests were optional or best endeavours this year, and Welsh Government would take a dim view of us using those anyway to measure attainment. And you know, Councillor Linda Jones just mentioned about schools having to design their assessment arrangements as they design their curriculum arrangements. And one of the questions from a colleague of mine that we could put in our response to Welsh Government is, how can we as a council or even as a country measure, you know, whether the curriculum of Wales is having the desired impact and the progress that children are making? That said, you know, when in our discussions with schools over the support visits for this autumn term, and certainly throughout the academic year, we'll be revisiting, you know, how are the children who are particularly stressed, how are they doing, you know? And what we found in our visits last year, and I'm sure we'll find, not many have started, as you can imagine, we're only a few weeks in this year, but schools, they are seeing that it's the basic skills that some of their pupils need to focus on. You know, it is the reading and the writing and you know, the basic numeracy skills. But before that, they're quite rightly, in my opinion, it's concentrating on the well-being of pupils, the anxiety, because, you know, if they're not happy or they're comfortable in school, it's difficult to learn, you know, the other things. So I think this time next year, of course, we can try and give you updates, but I think it will be an ongoing question that no doubt you'll keep asking, and we will keep trying to answer. And as schools develop their assessment processes, I think you'd be right to keep asking, well, how do we know how they're doing? So it's not quite a pinpointed focus answer, but a really good question, and one that please keep on asking, and I know you will.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. I think we will. Thanks, Al, for that. The next hand up is Councillor Beverly Hopkins. Beverly.
Right, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Damien, for that. It was very informative. Mine isn't a question as such, it's more of a statement. And having appointed a new head this year, our school governing body really welcomed all the input and support we had from the school improvement team. And can I just say that going forward, I'm sure all schools will benefit from your team, both primary and secondary. And I'm sure most governing bodies would welcome that input from your team.
If I can come back, Councillor Jones. Yes, yes. Thank you, Bev. Thanks for your kind words, and I'll pass those on to Fiona, who, as you know, will be leaving us in a couple of weeks anyway. So I know she'll appreciate that. So they're very kind of you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Mike Day. Mike.
Hi, Damien. Thanks for the presentation. It's really good to see that things are moving on. I just wondered if I could explore one or two of the kind of practical aspects with you. The first would be in connection with the commissioned heads. How does it work in terms of them being released from schools and so on? What sort of impact does that have? And secondly, then, is what would you see as the key challenges over the next 12 months for you as a group in supporting schools?
Okay, right. So the commissioned model, we tend to look for expressions, go out for expressions of interest from our heads. we invite really the more our experienced heads who've got the capacity, if you like, in the school to be able to come out to work for us. So I used to be a commissioned head. So for example, you would have an allocation of schools. You might have 4 or 5 schools, and with those schools that you would arrange to conduct the support visit and or the head teacher performance management. In pre-COVID times, you might be involved in work scrutiny, listening to learners, all of the things really that during the visits that our permanent team would do, but you haven't got the other areas that we work on as permanent staff for obvious reasons, because you're running a school. How it works is the heads would come out and they'd log their days, they'd let us know about, they'd send in a claim form, if you like, of these are the days I've supported the local authority, and there would be a remuneration for the school of an amount. That allows the school to, while the head isn't there, the deputy might be able to come out of class and have experience of running the school for that day or a series of days. So it's good professional development for the senior staff in the school. You know, the deputy could act up as head, or and the senior staff could assume deputy responsibilities in the head's absence. But also good professional development for the heads as well. So they're visiting other schools, they're seeing things that they think, oh, I might not work exactly like that in my school, but an adaptation of that could work in my school. So it's good professional development for the heads, and they might be working, even though they're an experienced head, they might be supporting another school with an issue that they've never experienced in my case, in 10 years of headship. You're working with a new head teacher who perhaps in 6 weeks has dealt with things that you've never ever had to deal with. So I know during my time as a commissioned head, I'd certainly find there were things I would take back to school. Trust trios being an example, where your teachers would work in threes to watch one another teach and have a professional dialogue. They found that more useful in a professional development way than your typical lesson observations from the head teacher coming in with a clipboard, which I know I've done that as well. So that's how the commissioned model tends to work. We try to keep the commissioned heads for, say, 3 years. It's continuity for the schools. It doesn't always work like that, because perhaps the commissioned heads, their circumstances change, or a pandemic comes along and they're staying longer than the 3 years, which has been the case for some of our colleagues. But we try to keep them for at least 3 years, so there's a little bit of continuity for them. In terms of challenges, it's certainly, you'd probably be amazed if I didn't mention COVID and the pressures schools are facing. It's you know, trying to have that balance where schools, and they are under enormous pressure. The day-to-day issues of, I've got staff who are isolating, I've got staff who've got to go for a PCR test, which means I need to move this member of staff to take that class, and just the logistics every morning. You know, heads are telling me, get into lunchtime is an achievement, get into the end of the day, get into tomorrow, coupled with supporting schools get ready for the curriculum that's coming in September, for the ALNet that's coming in, and also there is a degree. I spoke to a head about this the other day, who said, look, there still should be, to be fair to this head teacher, there still should be a degree of accountability to make sure we are doing the best for our pupils and our children and young people, and the governors need to know we're doing the best for our pupils, children and young people. So it's treading that fine line of support challenge, yes, but you know, making sure that schools are moving in the right direction. So yeah, certainly COVID in the preparation for Curriculum for Wales and ALNet, I'd say those are the challenges in the coming year. And for another example would be, we used to be able to look under the bonnet, as colleagues of mine would say, where you'd speak to children, listen to learners, you'd look at the quality of work in books, you might even be involved in seeing some teaching. We haven't been able to do that. So it would be nice to be able to slowly, and when the time allows, be able to get more involved in collaborating with the school as with their self-improvement processes. Not coming in as a one-off event, but when a school is undertaking their school improvement activities, us collaborating with them and not verifying or validating, but getting that insight as to what they're doing is moving in the right direction. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I come back very briefly?
Certainly, yes.
First of all, is just to say that I think we all appreciate the developmental opportunities that are provided by this sort of commissioning service that we have. And I think it's great that we're able to make best use of the experience and expertise that we have within our workforce. And I know that, quite often the experience that head teachers have accumulated, as you said, Damien, dealing with individual circumstances can be of great benefit to other staff, particularly those who are newer. And I think one of the issues that I would be concerned about, and it's I suppose a message for Robert here, would be to ensure that this service is protected. That as far as possible, the budget continues to be provided, so that the backfilling, as it were, of those who are released to support other schools is able to continue. We need to be able to find mechanisms to make use, as I said earlier, of the experience and expertise of head teachers. So I hope that we can continue with that in future.
Great, thanks, Mike. Councillor Robert Smith. Robert.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Damien has described the model we're working to very effectively there, and I think I'd echo a lot of what Mike has said. This is an opportunity to harness the expertise that exists within our schools and use it across the whole system. And it has the other advantage of giving individual heads a system-wide experience. Takes them out of their own school, gives them, as Damien described, gives them an opportunity of working with other heads, and I think it's a mutually beneficial discussion then between different heads that's going to contribute to the success of the whole system. It's not it's not without its challenges. We recognise that bringing heads out of school. It's not an easy thing to do, but it does give, as Damien described, it gives other people within the school an opportunity to develop professionally, develop those leadership skills, and hopefully build up the pool of talent and succession planning and so on that we need in Swansea and elsewhere. So I think it has certainly got those advantages. And yes, Mike, I take on board what you're saying. This isn't a cheap model of school improvement, and I think anyone who thinks that you can use commissioned heads to save money is living in a fool's paradise. This has got an expensive model. It's an effective model, but I think it's something that we need to monitor and take forward as best we can.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? No hands up. So great. Thank you very much, and thank you, Damien, for that quite in-depth report, actually, and taking all the questions, and to Robert as well for that. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the work programme, and Michelle advises me there are no changes to the work programme. So it's all it leaves me with to say thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair. There was an item on the work programme that was deferred, harassment in schools. Do we have a date for that to be reconsidered by the committee?
It does need to be reconsidered. We haven't, but can we look at that and come back to the next meeting? Certainly we'll do that, because yes, we did say we would get back, but we wanted to do it in a thoughtful way rather than rush in, all guns blazing. So we will come back to the next meeting, which is going to be on the 21st of October, and we'll have something to say about that and how we can fit that into the future programme. Great. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you soon, and don't get too wet.
Okay.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you out. Bye.